Welcome to Supernormalized, Dr. Edith Ubuntu-Chan. Dr. Edith, I'm very interested in knowing about your process to do with blindfold vision. It's an interesting idea, and obviously it works because I know for myself that sometimes when I'm in an intuitive sort of state, I can actually even see in the dark. So,
Yes.
welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to share this conversation with you and your
Yeah.
amazing audience that you've created.
Yeah, thank you. And look, I'm really curious because you actually did this through meditation. Now, uh, what drew you first of all to meditation? I mean, was it something that you just were drawn to, or how did that happen?
Oh, well, where to begin these stories, with the kinds of audience that you have, I think people can handle a lot of different far out conversations.
Yeah, go
But
far out. All yeah, we love it. So,
yeah, so my journey actually began when I was 4, when I witnessed this Qigong healer heal my dad's back pain and my sister's ankle sprain in one quick session when they had been to doctor after doctor after doctor and nobody could help. So that was always in the back of my mind. But as an adult, I studied math in university. I had a software career in the beginning. And then I walked into this meeting, my software career, where I had just won Employee of the Year award. Things were going really well. I was being, like groomed, fast tracked into management, so to speak. And suddenly this like flash forward, flash back happened where I saw all of these super successful people in this software company. And it dawned on me that I didn't want to be like any of them when I grew up.
what
So
was it
I
about
had,
that you didn't like?
well, they were very kind, great people. None of them felt very peaceful, content, fulfilled, happy, satisfied with life. And they were all kind of like had health oddities and inflamed and stressed out and tense. Just they didn't look very content despite having all these material successes. So
Oh,
that was a certain moment in which it flashed back to age 4 when I saw the Qigong healer and I said, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to do that. So
oh,
that's kind of the backstory of how I got into holistic Chinese medicine, Qigong, meditation, traveling
yeah.
around the world and, exploring all these things. But as soon as I had that realization and I cold turkey quit my software job and went to Chinese medicine school, that's really when the journey began because I started studying Qigong very diligently and meditating consistently.
Mm.
And there was this certain one experience that was the beginning of a series of mystical experiences. I was in Chinese medicine school, enjoying myself, learning acupuncture, energy, all kinds of beautiful things. But in Qigong class, that's when you really start to have the direct experience of these things. It's not just theory,
Oh,
right? It's not
yeah.
textbook. It's not memorizing, regurgitation, and taking examinations. It's actually having the direct experience. Are you a Qigong practitioner, CJ?
No, but I'm really curious because I've actually done like Qigong with people in groups, but I didn't know the depth of it until like, I mean, there's so much more obviously that I have no idea about with this. So tell
Well,
me.
yeah. Well, I suppose Qigong is really just any kind of practice where you practice breath work, you're attuning to the energy flow, you're focused and conscious of your attention and intention, right?
Yeah.
And you have your body either seated, holding certain mudras, or moving your body in a certain way. So if you have these different elements together, conscious attention and intention, conscious breathing, and conscious awareness of how you're flowing the energies in your physical system
Mm,
and also
mm.
beyond, that's called Qigong. So
Wow.
life is Qigong, really, right? Like being conscious and aware of your attention, intention, and the movement of energy is Qigong. So anytime you're aware like this, is always a win. You always have a more beautiful experience of life. I call this returning to our natural state, not like stuck in mental limitation patterns, overthinking, and all these programs that we run because of our upbringing. We drop
Mm.
back into our natural state. So there was this one specific practice during Chinese medicine school that because I was so enjoying my Qigong practice, I kept practicing outside of school beyond what was required in Chinese medicine school curriculum. I just kept practicing. There was this certain moment that the teacher was guiding this meditation, and I was going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I felt so peaceful. I felt so in harmony. And then all of a sudden, it went so deep that the whole thing exploded. It just all burst into trillions of pieces of love and light. And there was no time, no space, no consciousness of some girl named Edith in San Francisco doing a meditation class. Nothing. It was just a return home to our natural state of pure love.
You transcended yourself.
We have these words to describe these things, but it's actually a completely ineffable experience.
Yes.
And it took many years for me to even begin to talk about it because it was so ineffable. And every time I tried to use words to describe it, it fell short of what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So what was interesting was, before that meditation, the teacher had said, in a meditative state, is helpful to bring some inquiries, some questions into meditation because clarity can come through. So I had brought some questions into this meditation. What was so incredible was in this state, as this ineffable state that I'll call infinite pieces of love and light, I experienced that every question was instantaneously answered, but it was answered in this multi-dimensional, multifaceted, holistic, 360-degree spherical way. Like all perspectives on that question was like all available. So I used to say that it was a state of pure love, pure light, and so much bliss, but it's actually utter and complete contentment, because there was no more lack. And I had never read any books about such a state. I had no reference point that such a state was possible, except somehow I knew that I had returned to our natural state. I went back to our true reality. I just knew that. So who knows how long, because it was beyond time and space. There's no reference point for time or space or physicality. But at a certain point, there was this awareness that there is this voice guiding some meditation somewhere. It felt really far away.
Unfamiliar
And
probably.
then it was like, what? Wait, oh yeah, there is a girl named Edith sitting in a Qigong class in San Francisco somewhere, some little dot, somewhere in the cosmos that is, oh yeah, wait, maybe this it should return to that it. That's how it felt. And so came this utterly absurd process of trying to squeeze infinite love and light back into this density of a pretense of a girl sitting in a classroom, a grad student sitting in a classroom somewhere trying to meditate, right? So this absurd experience of squeezing all this love and light back into the density of the physical form, it was almost painful. And when it finally landed, there was so much that it turned into uncontrollable avalanches of tears. And the tears took some time to be understood as this kind of like clashing of the most immense love, gratitude, and appreciation that I got to go home and return and remember who we really are, our natural state, and intense anger and grief and sadness and all these emotions, recognizing that how this place has been structured and created and all the stories that we tell ourselves about this physical reality is actually all backwards and upside down. I just like instantaneously had all of this come to me, right? So I became a seeker after that. Hi, honey. We're doing an interview. This is CJ. Want to say hi?
Hey.
So I became a seeker, and for a very long time, meditation was kind of an escape from the intense density of this world. And I think probably your audience, many people can relate because we're the types of people that see through the backwards and upside down nature of how many things work, you know. And so I would meditate just to escape the denseness of this place. And then at a certain point, I started realizing, oh, wait a minute. After traveling around the world, studying with different teachers and going on deep or long retreats and having a series of additional mystical experiences, I realized that we as souls actually chose to come here to experience this apparent illusion of limitation and density and separation for us to evolve and grow and learn and know ourselves deeper. So I started just welcoming all the challenges and ups and downs of this physical realm more and more and more until now I feel like we're at a beautiful time where it's all integrating together so beautifully that we can have these kinds of conversations openly on the internet and find like-hearted, like-spirited friends all across the world that are also going through this journey of discovery and exploration together. So yeah, that's kind of the backstory of how I became, the weirdo in a good way. I hope with these crowds. I hope that we're all amongst weirdos around here.
Absolutely,
And,
we
yeah,
embrace the
that's how
weirdos
it
here.
started. Yes.
That's such an incredible and amazing story, and I can say that I've related to it because of my own experiences. But I was only just listening to another podcast only yesterday with Chase Hughes on it, the guy that talks about behavioral work, and he was talking about how he had some very far out experiences using DMT, but when he was coming back to his body, that he came back into his body and he just realized that the feeling of the world was like almost like clay by comparison, and it seems like a low res sort of almost comical sort of version of it. Because the other space, when we're in that super expanded space, that is the most real of real. So the difference is so profound and interesting to note. And once you realize that, you've actually been to those spaces, and I think that everyone has access to those spaces like you have had through meditation or other processes, you can expand yourself out and then come back and then treat this life like, well, it's theater and it's fun. Just enjoy it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I know that we're going to talk about the blindfold vision work, and the secret to success, by the way, with the blindfold vision ability is the fun. In fact, when people start taking themselves too darn seriously, their perception will shut down. And that's when we will tickle them, tell some really bad dad jokes, or do whatever to get people to be goofy and childlike again. And boom, their perception opens back up. The
Wow.
same with like spoon bending. I've played with spoon bending with groups before, and people are trying so hard, thinking so much about it. And then we tell some dad jokes, and boom, everybody's spoons just like melt, right? So yeah, I think the world is it's such a paradox. The world is getting so serious out there, and it turns out the solution is to bring some joy and fun back into our lives and to
Yeah,
allow
definitely.
these superhuman possibilities to actually normalize, as the name of your show, through joy and fun and childlike curiosity.
Absolutely. Yes. How did these experiences reshape your sense of purpose and your relationship with service and leadership?
Wow, what a powerful question. Well, I would say that the previous version of me would have thought about purpose and leadership as much more like I need to produce a certain result in the outer world. And then as I have more and more of these experiences, I start to, and maybe some of it is just the maturity of having more years under one's belt. I start to realize that everybody has to go through their own journey, and that we're all here to just learn and grow and evolve our own self. And then as a natural byproduct, we're going to show up in greater service naturally through our example, not because we're trying so hard to change other people or change the systems or change the world,
Yeah.
but just through showing up as our most natural, authentic self. Love naturally flows in the directions that where service is appropriate and wanted and needed. So as the journey unfolds, we kind of move out of like, oh, the systems are so backwards and upside down, and I'm an angsty teenager that has to rebel and fight against the system, into a second stage of that is like, oh, I'm learning and growing and strengthening myself, and life is working for me and with me instead of against me. Into gradually more and more the state of like life just naturally flows through us and naturally evolves into the highest, most beneficial win-win-win naturally, just by attuning and aligning ourselves with the energies of love and wisdom. So it becomes more of a moment to moment state of being and state of flow, instead of like, I have this one purpose and it has to rigidly look like this. That kind
Yeah.
of dissolves over time.
Yeah. 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 No, that's, I think that's definitely the process I've experienced myself too. I mean, I'll talk about when I was younger because it sort of relates to that. I had this experience where I had did the meditation thing really, really deeply, and I was totally in a deep space. And then one time I was on the way coming out of that meditation space, which was infinite and expanded in the void, and this voice popped in and said, open your eyes, you don't have to do that anymore. I said, what? I said, you can just keep on being in this meditative space, but also being awake at the same time. I was like, oh, okay. And then I started to query it, and it gave me some more information about itself. And I was tested to make sure it wasn't any nefarious spirits or anything like that, because I know that they can stick around. And eventually I got to a point with it where it showed me these like ways of being in the world that that I could use to help people and make things change in positive ways. And I was really eager for people to change around me. I want everyone to have this ability to be connected to infinite light and love continuously. And it said, you don't have to do anything. You can't make people change. They change themselves. All you do is you change, and then the people around you will change. And it really stuck with me. I was like, oh, okay. And then over a period of time, I noticed the people that were around me were changing like rather rapidly because I had changed. And I thought, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And it involved no effort whatsoever. It was just, like you said, being like your authentic self within that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is such a powerful time we're in, because we it's all also like the beauty of right now, there's so much information. Everybody has information overload. So our practice is to cultivate the embodied state, like our embodiment, our energy, our nervous system does irradiate a frequency pattern of coherence and love and kindness and wisdom. As a byproduct of it, the physical reality, like cymatics, like bzz, it just shifts naturally,
Yes.
That's really the practice.
Yeah, for sure. What inequalities feel essential for humans to cultivate during this period of collective change?
Wow, these are some very powerful questions. I appreciate it. What inner qualities? I would say authenticity. Yeah, shedding the various layers and mass and limitation programmings and conditionings, and what's left is the raw, authentic goodness and beauty and purity that is our innate nature. To give ourselves permission to let that shine fully. And it takes a lot of courage, because we all have layers and layers of conditioning to shed and let go of in order to feel safe to go that deep into our authentic expression. So it's a advanced level of inner mastery work that is required to be our truest, deepest, most authentic essence while in physical form.
How does holistic medicine change when consciousness becomes a central variable rather than a side note?
Ooh. This reminds me of a dear friend of mine named Mark Gober. Have you heard of Mark Gober?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, he's written a series of books. The first one is called An End to Upside Down Thinking, which kind of lays the foundation of this just how false this fundamental notion of a pure physical materialist reality and how limiting it is for us to explore nature from this limited lens of physical materialism versus understanding that consciousness is really primary and the physical reality is like a byproduct of this underlying consciousness reality that is at the root of all things. So he wrote a series of follow-up books to it, and one of it is called An End to Upside Down Medicine, which I so appreciated. Explored a lot of different nuanced things, but there's one line in the book that says, perhaps the biggest issue, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it quoted and memorized, but I really resonate with this, is that we argue about, allopathic medicine versus holistic, versus Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, homeopathy, which modalities is more efficacious for whatever. But the deeper question is that if allopathic conventional medicine doesn't actually understand what a human being is, how can we create human health and well-being? Right? So I've been immersed in holistic medicine for 24 years. And in the last 5 to 10 years since becoming a parent and being immersed in the parenting and education spaces, I've launched some projects having to do with kids, education, parenting, holistic paradigms of education and parenting. And people often say, do you guys homeschool your children? What curriculum do you follow? And so on. In the space of education and parenting also, just like in the space of health, medicine, and wellness, before we jump into what modalities or what curriculum or what systems or what tools, tactics, strategies are best, the deeper question that is by far more interesting is, what is a human being? What are we doing here? Right?
Exactly.
So depending on a deeper understanding of what a human being is and what are we doing here, we're going to have a very different set of conversations about what is the ideal parenting paradigm, education paradigm, health and wellness paradigm, and all the systems of the world. We can have a different set of conversations based on a fundamentally deeper, richer understanding of what a human being is and what are we doing here, you know?
Yeah, that's a very logical place to start, and it makes a lot more sense than the current assumption of what we are, which seems to be like a working, eating machine that keeps society functional. That's crazy, and I'm glad
Yeah,
that we're waking up to that.
with the question of health and wellness, it also begs the question, depending on your understanding of what a human being is, what are we doing here, then your success metrics for health and medical outcomes is going to align differently. The very obvious one is that we might have a wiser understanding of how symptoms aren't a bad thing to be suppressed, and a deeper understanding of the wisdom of life and the wisdom of our body's intelligence, and how to turn every experience, including health challenges, into an opportunity of growth, evolution, and learning, right? And how does a good quote unquote doctor support and accompany a patient through that journey, not just suppress a bunch of symptoms, but actually hold space and hold them with the vision of the courage and depth and richness of the possibility of their healing, not just being a physical healing, but body, mind, emotion, soul can get up leveled and return to wholeness in the process. So yeah, there's a lot. That's a whole separate podcast conversation just alone, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you step back and look at life as a theater and everything, whatever challenges that come toward us in certain ways. If you're still treating it as a play, then you can actually treat it more lightheartedly, and in doing so, change the outcome quite dramatically.
Yes.
So, yeah, yeah. What
Yes.
daily practices do you think helps someone maintain clarity while living in a full modern life?
Well, earlier we were talking about meditation. Many people, I find that um, they the common definition of meditation is that it's a set of practices for us to de-stress ourselves,
Yes.
or a set of practices for us to, you know, to get out of overthinking, or to come back to greater peace or presence and so on. And I don't totally disagree. But as we evolve, we start to discover that meditation is just who and what we authentically are. It's just our natural state. It's who we actually are. Meditation is who we are. So there will come a time where we don't need to do meditative practices anymore, because we're so consistently stabilized in being in a meditative state 24/7, 365. So these meditative tools and tactics and strategies, these practices, they are useful to get us out of monkey mind overthinking, stressed out mode where we're all contorted and distorted, and come back to our authentic natural selves. But I'm also seeing very quickly we're evolving so fast, at an exponential rate, that we won't need to meditate anymore, because everybody will be their authentic meditative selves 24/7, 365.
Right. So we're moving into a different sort of paradigm where energetically we are all raised together.
Yes. And in the transitional period, I think we'll start to see these different types of practices as just kind of like energy hygiene practice more than anything. It's like in our current civilization. Remember in Elizabethan time, they didn't really bathe that much, and like sanitation and sewage and all of that wasn't like where it is now. I think we're accelerating so fast that within our lifetime, we'll start to see people that don't have good energy hygiene, that are all stressed out of their minds and overworking, overthinking, contorted and distorted. It will be a little bit like just not having good hygiene. That there will come a time where every morning we wake up and we do some really simple, like, clearing of our energies, because it's just like civilized to interact with one another with beautiful energy and pure presence. That's just considered polite human interaction, So I think we're gonna evolve into that state. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're on the way there. Although it does seem that there's going to be a bit of a birth canal ride on the
Yes.
way there too. It seems like, well, some people are believing in this war thing now, so we've got to listen to that, and so we've got to watch out for that too. But I'm sure that we're actually on the way. I do feel like I know that, because, like you said earlier, that we can have these conversations now. That's a big indicator. Whereas, I was living these conversations and having these conversations, what, when I was 20, and most people would just say, "No, he's crazy."
Yeah.
And now I'm like, no, this is normal. I can jump in a cab and a cab driver might talk to me about mindfulness. I'm like, wow, this is cool.
It is very cool. I just really want to honor you, CJ, and all the listeners that have been holding it down, that pioneering energy. Like, there's a bunch of us that volunteered to pioneer a new consciousness on Earth, and we get to see the fruits of that now. It's really accelerating rapidly.
Yeah,
And by the way,
definitely.
with our adult blindfold training, I collaborate with Dahlia and Dahlia's daughter Lidu, who's a telepathic teenage savant. And
Yeah.
we just came back from 2 back-to-back adult blindfold vision training workshops, and Lidu was there channeling. Is it channeling? She answers beautiful questions with. She answers questions with so much beauty and wisdom, because she's so deeply connected with the divine wisdom. And we were asking her about the wars, and she said something. I'm paraphrasing. She said, they're stoking another attempt at distraction and division, because
Yes.
there's too big of a wave of a mass scale awakening into our true divine nature right now. We're getting so powerful, so consider it, I guess, a metric of our success.
Yes, that's
That,
a good way to put it.
yeah, that these symptoms are getting stirred up to the surface. It means that we are really awakening to our divine nature very powerfully and very rapidly right now.
Truth. How do you train energy awareness without pushing the nervous system towards strain or burnout?
Such another great question. I'll use our blindfold vision training as an example, because I came from many decades of Qigong practice and, Tai Chi, martial arts, that world. There's a certain way to train. And then now I'm with the blindfold vision training program. So I have trained somewhere between 250 to 300 children and families with our kids program. And then last year we started training adults, and we train adults in groups, in-person workshops of about 15 to 20 at a time in collaboration with Dahlia.
Yeah, we should probably tell people what blindfold vision is in case they've never heard of it.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
blindfold vision is also known as mindsight, is also known as extraocular vision. It has a bunch of different terms to it. I like to use the term blindfold vision because it's easy for the children to say. And it speaks to the fact that you can wear a blindfold and actually see through the blindfold. So it's kind of self-explanatory. So it's this ability that all human beings have through some games and meditations and simple practices to awaken this light sensing or visual sensing abilities while your physical eyes are actually covered up. But actually, with our adult training, we don't focus exclusively on the visual part. With the blindfold on, we are practicing sensing, feeling, hovering, smelling, tasting, hearing, and knowing all these other intuitive senses without the assistance of our physical eyes. And then we build up to the ability to actually see blindfolded using our mindsight or blindfold vision. And so the reason I bring this up in answer to your question, CJ, is that although there are all these lineages of more austere meditative practices, I'm discovering that the consciousness across the board, across all of mankind, is accelerating where these gifts and abilities are activating so naturally that just by playing fun games, we can have this joyful game-like form of meditative play that awakens these expansive abilities. And so, what kinds of practices? I think just the playful, childlike nature, whatever we can do to reawaken that state. As a natural byproduct, a lot of these expansive gifts and abilities, they just come online very naturally now.
When I've been in alternate states of reality with my spirit team, they are always at play in ultimate joy, continuously, like life is a circus for them. So I completely understand how that focusing on the fun side, the fun aspect, allows you to reconnect to that sort of energy, that sort of source connection. And obviously it's going to make it so you can do anything really if you really open to it to that sort of depth. Now, what first convinced you that blindfold perception deserves serious attention?
Well, I first heard about it in 2011. I was at a workshop with a meditation teacher called Drunvalo Melchizedek. That's some of your audience.
I know of Drunvalo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he was
had
really big back then.
Yes. So yeah, I'm also OG in that way. So he had mentioned about the folks that are doing what's called extraocular vision in Mexico, and back then it was almost like assumed that only children can do it, that adults are just too far gone. But
Yeah,
if you
right.
catch the kids early enough, you can save them from being too programmed by society while they're still, like super neuroplastic and growing in their abilities to nurture it, and then they can keep it into adulthood. But it wasn't even thought like really possible for adults to do this work. So I kind of put it on the back burner. And I thought, well, maybe someday if I ever had kids, I don't know if I'll ever have kids. Fast forward in 2013, I came back from an extended Darkroom retreat in Thailand with a teacher named Jasmuheen. It was an 11-day retreat with 9 days and 9 nights in complete darkness. And I had a huge exponential acceleration of my intuitive gifts after that. So much so that I came back to San Francisco. I'm now, have a very stable and successful Chinese medicine practice. I go to work and I was able to perceive, see, sense, feel, and know things about my patient and just zero right in. So my clinical efficacy skyrocketed after that. But at night, I didn't know how to turn it off. So living in the city, it was so cacophonous that it was crazy making. I could sense, feel, know, and hear my neighbor's stressful thoughts at night, and I couldn't
Oh,
sleep. It was
yeah.
so cacophonous. It was kind of unbearable. So I moved to the countryside with my then partner. We actually almost broke up at that point because I said, you like the city, I cannot tolerate it, I'm going to move to the countryside. But he just chose to move up there with me. And as soon as we moved up there, this little boy started coming to my dreams and meditations day after day after day, month after month, saying that there is a new generation of young people. These babies are incarnating on earth right now, and they're going to show the world a whole new realm of possibilities of what it is to be human. They're
Awesome.
going to hold this beautiful energy and blanket the earth with a new consciousness. And they're very consciously choosing moms and dads all across the world that are precisely chosen, that can hold and nurture this level of a human. And I was so flattered. He said, I scoured everywhere and I want you to be my mom. You're it.
Oh.
And so there was a lot of back and forth. There's a whole story around it. But basically, after many months of these visitations, he ended up jumping into his dad's dream. And he had been like, la, 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 I'm not ready to have children. But then he was like, oh, this baby's pretty cute. So we attuned to his energy, and there was a certain moment in which we both knew that he was to be consciously conceived. And it was this indescribable experience of feeling his strong presence. And the moment he was conceived, the womb just went. I could feel that
Wild.
there was breath and life. I didn't have to take a pregnancy test, and I
You
had
just
this
knew.
connection. All
Yeah.
throughout the pregnancy, I was already in telepathic conversation with this little boy, all pre-conception and all throughout pregnancy and all into after he was born. And fast forward in 2020, this little boy and I, he's now 5, and he looked exactly the way that I had been shown he would look in the dreams. We watched this movie that you might have heard of called Superhuman by Carolyn Corey.
Yeah.
In the movie, they featured a lot of wonderful gifts and abilities of telekinesis, remote viewing, remote influencing, and then there's a big chunk of the movie that featured this mindsight ability, this ability to see blindfolded. But this was 2020, and so my boy said, oh, Mama, I want to learn how to do it. I think I could do it. Carolyn Corey found a teacher named Bodan who was trained in a method called infovision, and he's based in Canada, but the infovision was developed in Eastern Europe. Anyway, Bodan was a pioneer kind of guy. He said, Nobody's done it before. We don't know if it's possible, but the world is shut down. Let's get a few families together and see if we can do it over Zoom, remotely somehow.
Wow.
Right? So usually these classes with kids are done as follows. The parents get out of the way because you might mess it up. Drop the child off at the teacher's house for 10 or 12 one-hour classes. And then
Yeah.
by the end, the child will start to have these intuitive seeing abilities. So 10 or 12 sessions. But the parents get out of the way because you might mess it up, because the energy of coherence and the encouragement and the positive
Yeah,
vibes is
right.
so important and so precise with this work. So Boudin just said, let's just try it. It could be a fail, it could be success, who knows? So
Yeah.
there were a few of us families that experimented with this, and boom, our children all got activated. And so after that, Boudin and I kept in touch. We became good friends. And 2.5 years ago, we started really sitting with the process and researching the different methodologies. And him and some of his other colleagues have all kind of started developing different additional methodologies and simplifying, refining, adding, massaging the methodology. And then the way that my mind tends to work is I'm really good at pattern recognition. I have a background, my undergrad is in applied math and engineering. And because of my own intuitive abilities, I can just see patterns very well. And so at this point, I had been immersed in the holistic education and holistic parenting conversation and launching some trainings and summits, and been invited to other trainings and summits with other conscious moms, dads, families all across the world. So now I have thousands of people in my newsletter following my work that are really interested in a holistic, more conscious, attuned, and awakened approach to raising and educating their children. So Boudin and I put our hearts and minds together and completely reworked the whole methodology with not just like maybe we can let the parents in, but no, we're going to teach the parents how to co-facilitate their children's intuitive superpowers together with us side by side. So we turned it into a 6-week program, not 10 or 12 weeks, 6 weeks, where the first week and the 6 weeks is just coaching the moms and dads and teaching them all about the most efficient and smooth flowing methodology. And I'm currently writing a book about it so that we can, because in the past there was a little bit of like throwing darts at this topic, but there's a really clean and mature methodology that we've developed now over these years.
Wow,
And then
that's
so
cool.
the first week and the 6 weeks, we focus on the moms and dads, teach them how to co-facilitate with us. And then the core 4 weeks, we work side by side with moms and dads together with the children. And in between each of the 4 classes, we give very specific fun and games for moms and dads to play with the children, so that it turns into not just moms and dads like helping a little bit, but they're an integral part of the experience. And the whole family goes through this magical expansion together. And it's like this bonding that is so much joy and delight. Like every single week feels like the very first time your child rolled over or walked across the room or said mama or dada. Like that kind of magic just unfolds
Wow.
session after session after session, except your child is seeing blindfolded. They're seeing behind their head. They're seeing into the other room. They can see under the table, and all these magical abilities start coming online. And moms and dads are like right there at the front lines of every single breakthrough. So I'm really
Wow.
proud and very happy that we reworked the methodology to bring in the whole family and turn this into such a beautiful bonding experience for the whole family.
Yeah, right, and I can hear your passion in that. You're so excited. So that's a beautiful thing. What inner shifts tend to happen for children and adults once perception expands beyond the 5 senses?
Yeah, I think we're just beginning to discover it. You know, it's like what is a human being like when imagine if you didn't have a sense of smell and suddenly you do. How much richer, more interesting and beautiful is your life?
Yeah,
Imagine if
exactly.
you only saw black and white and suddenly you started seeing color. It's something like that. What would you do with that? Right? So now what we're discovering is that not only are we having intuitive seeing abilities come on, but the intuitive smell, intuitive hearing and taste, and intuitive knowing, all of these intuitive gifts are coming online. It's like dormant circuitry waking up. I call it de-zombifying ourselves. It's like these dormant abilities, they got atrophied. We became like zombie. And so there's an exponential increase in aliveness that we're seeing in our students as we awaken this dormant abilities. And so as a byproduct of it, there have been so many, but just to list a few, we're starting to see that this is like a game-like form of flow state training. So our children that couldn't sit still, they have ADHD diagnosis, now they have really good focus. The children that supposedly have diagnosis of dyslexia, many of them find that as soon as they put on the blindfold, they can read fluently with no dyslexia. What is up with that? A lot of the children after this blindfold vision training, their intuition skyrockets, and then they have really vivid dream lives, and then they will tell their moms and dads, like, Mama, you know, when I was in your belly, this, that, and the other thing happened. And I didn't like it. It felt so stressful being in your belly when that happened. And then the whole family gets to have a whole healing conversation to consciously let go of that and make amends for this subconscious energy that the child is still holding from in utero. My child from age 6, 7, 8, 9 would just every single night tell me his memories about his preconception. Like, Mama, when I was in space, it was like this, and this is how I chose you as my mama, and how all of that works. He shared so many powerful things about what it was like when I was a space baby before I came to Earth.
Love
You
that.
know, so these magical, beautiful byproducts of the expanded awareness coming back online, being honored, nurtured, and celebrated by the family and by the community. There's like really no aspect of life that it doesn't touch. And the children start to tell us that they feel so much more confident because they're what we're learning isn't so much the blindfold vision. We're learning what it feels like to be monkey mind, second guessing and overthinking, and what it feels like to know something. And so to have that gift of that inner knowing sense and to strengthen it through this game-like form of play, now you go through life with your inner compass intact. You know what is a yes and what is a no. In your body, you can feel it. And what a gift that our young people from age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 have this as a kind of fundamental skill or a kind of fundamental literacy, as important as reading, writing, arithmetic. To have this intact as part of their upbringing and education is going to support everything else they do for the rest of their life.
And the on-flow from that energetically to the whole world changes it in a positive way. Now,
Yes.
yeah, look, I'm loving this conversation because there's so many good things happening in it. So now, how do you keep this work grounded and ethical rather than sensational? Because, I mean, there's going to be people out there that are going to go, oh, you guys are just tripping, you know. Do you actually do any like studies yourself, even if they're anecdotal, empirical studies, that you can actually show that the positive changes in people that actually assist with their more integrated lives thereafter?
Yeah, so I am one person doing my best, and whoever is listening to this episode, I invite you to reach out to connect and collaborate. The biggest collaboration on that front that I'm working with right now is there's a nonprofit called the CUSAC Group, CUSAC. It was founded by Dr. Tom Campbell, who's known for his theory of everything, my big toe. So the CUSAC group has a mindsight study, and I'm a consultant on the study. And what we're doing is that with the Mindfold, in the beginning, when we first put it on, a lot of people start to experience, everybody has a different experience. Some people have little circles and different like windows of perception start opening. And some people have a little crack of light at the nose where it's like, wait, am I peeking? Or people will say, are you looking through the crack? That's the biggest objection that people have, right? It's like, are you somehow wearing the mask a little bit loose, peeking through the crack? So there's different ways in which, if you have the budget, you can have like a light sensor go inside the mask, a lux meter that shows that it actually is dark in there, even though the person, the subject, the student actually experiences seeing light, but the lux meter will measure that there's a very imperceptible amount of light, certainly not enough light hitting the physical eyeballs for the physical eye vision to be what's at play here. So there's that kind of thing. But with the Cusack group, what we're doing is we are evolving the level of the children's abilities to the point where we are taping over more and more and more of the nose bridge until we start putting shields over it. And if they can still see consistently at a 1 in a million chance of guessing, then we can be convinced. Or some of our children are especially good at seeing behind their head. Like if they can read numbers and letters and playing cards and shapes and so on behind their head at a 1 in a million chance of guessing, then we'll start to document this. So this is what we're currently working on. And the challenge with this is that our children have documented in a flow state with moms and dads, or moms and dads are getting into a flow. When you put them in a super sterile clinical environment with a stranger that is like a scientific researcher, clinician type of situation, you know, wearing a white coat with like a clipboard and it's all cold and unfriendly, is much more advanced to have the children tap into their joyful, playful flow state there, right? So that's the conundrum with this work, because consciousness, we're tapping into this playful, relaxed, comfortable flow state. And so that's why when we have moms and dads play with the children, the love bond is already there. And that's a big part of why we have such amazing results, because we're really building off of the pre-existing love bond that is already between mother and father and child, right? So Dahlia, who is my colleague that I share the adult training programs with, we collaborate on those. She has become now world renowned for having the most mature methodology for working with blind adults. Adults that don't have physical eyeballs. They have glass eyes or plastic eyes. So that's another population that is being now studied by scientists, because for sure they're not cheating because they don't have actual working eyeballs. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, how much proof do you need? Come on.
What are the doubters and skeptics going to do? So, so I think the proof is definitely coming. We've all seen so many cases that has us individually convinced. Now, from a scientific documentation perspective, this is a new field of human endeavor. So I encourage the audience to just be a little bit patient with it, getting all buttoned up from a scientific perspective, but it's all coming.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, I got to ask you, do you still do this online, or do you do it in person mainly?
So with the kids program, we do it online. In person is actually much easier. The online part allows us to reach all kinds of communities all across the world.
Okay.
With adults, we are so far just doing it in person. So a lot of the adult trainings in the past used to be 6 to 10 long days, and sometimes months and months of practice before the adults can awaken their abilities. Now, Dahlia and I have put our hearts and minds together and refined the methodology down to just 3 days. So 3 days, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. of consistent training, and in small groups of 15 to 20 people only. So we give everybody lots of custom attention, and everybody has their openings.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the methodology's gotten more mature, and also the consciousness has elevated to a point where these abilities are coming online very quickly. And we don't just do the blindfold perception; we also play with spoon bending and telekinesis and doing all kinds of like fun additional superhuman games in
Yeah.
between the blindfold practice. So it's a ton of fun. Yeah.
I'm sure people would love to take this up. I mean, what sort of person do you think would be attracted to this, and what would you say to them to say, just jump in, let's do it?
Well, I mean, everybody can follow their own path, at the certain moment where it's your time to really step into the full expression of your superhuman abilities, you will just feel the call. So never any pressure. We have so much fun. So I guarantee if you decide to join us for one of these workshops, you'll really enjoy it. And it's such a special community of open-minded truth seekers and consciousness explorers that you get to be friends with at these kinds of gatherings. And
Yeah,
who knows,
cool.
if you're single, maybe your twin flame soulmate might be there.
Unique selling point, love
Yeah, it
it.
really is for the open-minded consciousness explorer, the
Yeah.
human pioneer that knows that now is the time for us to let go of these silly old limitation programs. We don't need to shrink ourselves and be small anymore. We don't need to pretend to be so limited anymore. We can shine ourselves fully and play all out in this life. This is the time, and this is what we came here for.
Yeah, for sure. What would you love listeners to question about their own potential after hearing this conversation?
Well, when I hear that question, CJ, I have multiple streams of inspiration that flows through me, because having just come back from 2 back-to-back adult trainings, our trainings attract the most incredible souls, advanced, evolved souls that are already so expanded in their beauty, their love, their gifts and abilities. And I find, if anything, it's more like don't be so hard on ourselves. It's almost like we want these gifts and abilities. We want to grow and evolve ourselves so much that it almost blocks our own evolution, versus just not taking it so seriously.
Yeah.
Just play and return to the pure innocence of the joy in our heart, the fun, the delight, and then these old limitations, they just melt away. So I think if we push ourselves to move past our limitations too harshly, too strongly, it almost becomes counterproductive. So yeah, I would encourage the audience to maybe ask ourselves, how can I have more fun in my life again? How can I let go of my serious case of over seriousness, you know, and just like live in a state of joy again and return to our childlike nature. And that is the medicine that is so needed for these times.
Dr. Edith, we've come towards the end of the podcast. How do people find you and your work?
Thank you so much. Thank you for this beautiful conversation, CJ. If you guys would like to connect with me, my personal website is dredithubuntu.com. That's spelled Dredith, Edith, Ubuntu, Ubuntu.com. But specifically, the blindfold vision work will be easier to spell. The website is blindfold.vision, which will jump you to the part of my website that has all the blindfold vision stuff, because I've been, just like you, exploring consciousness for decades. So my website has all kinds of consciousness expanding content, but specifically the blindfold vision work, just go to blindfold.vision.
Thank you very much for your conversation, your wisdom, your sharing of your experience so openly. There's so much golden information in this conversation. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot of benefit out of it. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.